Second aorist participles. Let's go through aorist participles. They use the aorist stem, which makes sense. An aorist participle uses the aorist stem. And that aspect is undefined. Remember, this is what we care about with participles, is the stem, because that tells us the aspect. The present has continuous, the aspect is undefined with the aorist. It has the same adjectival endings as the present. The second aorist has no tense formative. This will be important when we look at the first aorist. The first aorist maintains a tense formative of sigma alpha. The aorist passive tense formative is theta epsilon. The aorist is discontinuous with the main verb, which means it's going to be translated after or when. Remember, the present was continuous with the main verb, and therefore we translated it as while. The second aorist active participle, the tense stem, of course, is aorist. The aspect is undefined. The tense formative, it does not have a tense formative. It does not have an augment. Participles do not have augments. Its voice is active. And the adjectival endings are the present active participle ami. And it's going to be a 3-1-3 declension, which is the same as the present tense. The adverbial translation is after or when. Formation of second aorist active participle balo. Now, balo, the second aorist, only has one lambda. We're going to be using the second aorist stem, bal with one lambda, plus the present active participle of ami. So we're going to get balon after he threw, masculine singular nominative. The second aorist active participle of balon after through. Nominative, balon, and the aorist stem has only one lambda. In the neuter, remember, the neuter nominative and accusative are the same. This is an adjective, so the neuter is balan, the nominative is balan, the accusative is balan. In all cases of adjectives and nouns, the genitive and dative of the masculine and neuter are the same. Therefore, the genitive singular is balantas for the masculine and balantas for the neuter. Likewise, the dative for the masculine is balonti, and it is also balonti in the neuter. Masculine accusative is balonta. Nominative plural masculine is balontes. The neuter, remember, the neuter has only one ending for the accusative, for the plural, and that is an alpha. So it is balonta, and because nominative and accusative are always the same, it is balonta in the nominative and balonta in the accusative. Genitive, balonton, this is our gift. On is always the ending of the genitive plural. And the dative plural is balusi, and the neuter balusi. What's happening here is since with sigma iota is the ending, it is going to overwrite the new tau. Remember, a new tau plus a sigma is equal to a sigma. And then balontas for the accusative plural. The feminine is straightforward. Balusa, beluses, beluse, belusan, belusai, beluson, belusais, belusas. Everything that you learned about adjectives is the same with participles, and the endings are the same as they were in the present. The second aorist contract participle. Remember, second aorist contract participles are formed if the stem of the verb ends in a vowel. That's because we have a connecting vowel, and that is what's going to emerge. Since the first vowel of the adjectival ending begins with an omicron, the contract is absolutely predictable. Final epsilon or omicron becomes omicron upsilon, u. Poieo becomes poiuntas. Plerao becomes pleruntas. And the final alpha or omega becomes an omega. Agapao becomes agapontas. Participles, second aorist middle. The second aorist middle participle takes the aorist stem, obviously. Its aspect is undefined. It has no tense formative. It has no augment. Its voice is middle or deponent. The endings are the same as the present middle passive. We have amen plus a 212 adjectival ending. The adverbial translation is after or when. So let's look at the formation of the second aorist middle participle. We begin with the aorist stem. We're going to use genomai here. And gen is the aorist stem. And we know this is going to be a deponent, right? Because genomai in our vocabulary ends with mai, a middle ending, which makes it a deponent. So, gen, we're going to have the sign of the middle, which is amen. And we're having the middle because this is a deponent. And we'll have to use the middle. Amen. And we're using an adjectival ending, a 212, and we're using os for the masculine singular. And we get genomenos after he was in the masculine singular nominative. The second aorist middle participle of genomai, it's almost exclusively deponent after being. Genomenos for the masculine, and of course, neuter will be genomenon, both in the nominative and accusative. Genitive, the same, genomenu in the neuter and masculine. Dative, genomeno and genomeno in the neuter. Accusative singular masculine is genomenon. 212 declension. Nominative plural, genomenoi. Neuter will be genomena because alpha is always the ending of the nominative and accusative neuter. Genitive, on is the ending always, so we get genomenon both in the masculine and neuter. The dative is genomenois, and also the masculine and neuter are the same. Accusative plural masculine is genomenus. And then the feminine is straightforward, first declension, genomene, genomenes, genomene, genomenane, genomenai, genomenon, genomenais, genomenas. Participles, first aorist active. Remember, first and second aorist have the same mean translations. The difference is purely form. They both are aorists, and everything about them is the same, except first aorist has a different form than the second aorist. So first aorist active participle. The stem is aorist. Its aspect is undefined, the same as the aspect of the second aorist. First aorist, however, has a tense formative, sigma alpha. It has no augment. There are no augments in participles. The voice is active, and adverbial translation would be after or when and then the participle. Formation of first aorist participle. We start with an aorist stem, in this case lu, and remember lu never changes, so lu is also an aorist stem. Lu, we use a tense formative sigma alpha, and then we add an adjectival ending. Lusasa, after she loosed. So let's look at the first aorist active participle for luo. And this is after he, she, it loosed. The nominative singular in the masculine is lusas, and like usual, the nominative singular masculine is different and must be memorized. There's no necessarily any logic, it has to be memorized. The neuter is lusan, absolutely expected, and because it's neuter, it's the same in the nominative and the accusative. The genitive, and here we can see the third declension ending, lusantas, and as always, the masculine and neuter are identical. Also in the dative, lusanti, the masculine and neuter are identical. The accusative singular for the masculine is lusanta. Nominative plural for the masculine is lusantes, and the neuter is absolutely expected. The neuter ending plural, nominative and accusative, is always alpha. Genitive plural, lusantone, lusantone. Own is our gift, remember that the genitive plural is always own. Dative plural, lusasi, and you'll see again that that sigma has merged with the new tau, and now all we see is the sigma. Same thing that we can see in the nominative singular. This is identical to what happens in third declension. Accusative plural, masculine, lusantas. The feminine looks like a standard first declension. Lusasa, lusases, lusase. The only thing that's different is obviously in the feminine, it does not have an ending, so the ending is sa. The rest of them followed by an eta. And then once again, we're back to the alpha with lusasan. Lusasai, lusason, lusasais, and lusasas. First aorist square of stops. Remember, because the tense formative, in this case the first aorist participle, begins with a sigma, stems ending with stops merge in very predictable ways. So, blepo becomes blepsas. That P has become C because blepsas is actually blepsas. And what Greeks do is they have a letter that is the merging of these two. So, blepsas, diako, I follow, becomes dioxas. Dioxas, the kasi, the same thing, is a kappa sigma. Patho, persuade, becomes pesas. The theta merges with the sigma. First aorist contract participles. First aorist contract participles are formed if the stem of the verb ends in a vowel. And like the future, it's very predictable because the tense formative begins with a sigma. Final stem vowels expand in one of two ways. Alpha and epsilon expand to eta, so we get agapao becomes agapesas. Poieo becomes poiesas. The omicron expands to an omega. So plerao will expand to plerosas. First aorist active and deponent participles. Let's look at a couple of examples. Autas eothon didaxas ton lagan. He came when or after he taught the word. You'll see that autas and diaxas agree in both being masculine nominative. Aute eothon didaxasa ton lagan. In this case, the aute agrees with the ending of diaxasa, sasa, a feminine, and we get she came when or after she taught the word. Autas eothon dexamenas ton lagan. He went when or after he received the word. Aute eothon didaxamene ton lagan. She went when or after she received the word. You'll notice the sentences are identical. The difference is autos is masculine, aute is feminine, and the participle agrees with both. First aorist middle participle. Now remember, the aorist, unlike the present, has three distinct voices: active, middle, and passive. And all three have different forms. The first aorist middle participle, its stem, of course, is aorist. Its aspect is undefined. It does have a tense formative, just like the first aorist active, of sigma alpha. It has no augment. There are no augments in participles. Its voice is a true middle, and its endings is sigma alpha, that is its tense formative, plus men, plus 212 adjectival endings. The translation is after loosed. The formation of the first aorist middle participle. We begin with an aorist stem, and here we're using loose, so the aorist stem looks just like the present. We do have a tense formative of sigma alpha. We have the sign of the middle, which is men. And you notice we don't have a connecting vowel amen because we have a tense formative sigma alpha, so it goes directly sa men. And then it has an adjectival ending, and it's a 212 ending. And we get lusamenas, after when he loosed. The first aorist middle participle of luo, after loosed for self. Now, the big usage of the middle participle, of course, is going to be for deponents. But we're going to look at here as a true middle and not a deponent. So we're going to begin with lusamenas. And we know that luo does not have a true middle. Therefore, it has to have a different meaning. In this case, it would mean something like, he loosed for himself. And then, of course, the neuter, lusamenon and lusamenon. The genitive singular, the masculine and the neuter agree, lusamenu. They also agree in the dative, lusameno, and the masculine accusative is lusamenon. Yes, it does look identical to the neuter. How do you know whether it's masculine or neuter? Context. The plural is lusamenoi, standard 2-1-2 endings, as, u, o, on. Oi. The neuter, we know that's a plural ending because the neuter plural is the only participle that ends in an alpha. So lusamena, and of course the neuter is the same in the nominative and accusative. Genitive, lusamenon, same in the neuter and masculine. Dative, lusamenois, and the accusative plural for the masculine is lusamenus. And the feminine is a standard first declension. Lusamene, lusamenes, lusamene, lusamenen. Lusamenai, lusamenon, lusamenize, and lusamenas. The aorist passive participle. It is aspect undefined, just like all aorists. The stem is aorist. The tense formative is theta epsilon. We've seen that theta before. The aorist passive verb has theta eta. Theta epsilon is actually the stem. No augment. The voice is passive. And its adverbial translation would be after or when. The formation of the aorist passive participle. By now, you're beginning to see that this is pretty repetitive. We have an aorist stem. Lu is the same all the way through, so its aorist stem is luo. Tense formative of theta epsilon. And then an adjectival ending, third declension, 3-1-3. And we get luthentas, after was loosed, assuming that what it's referring to is also in the genitive singular. Aorist passive participle of luo, after being loosed. Nominative singular, here we have the theta epsilon. This is identical after the nominative. Remember, the nominative is always going to be a little funky. The neuter is luthen, nominative and accusative. Genitive, wow, now we see it. Luthentas, we see that theta epsilon and a true third declension ending. Dative, luthenti, same in the masculine and neuter. And the accusative masculine is luthenta. Nominative plural is luthentes. And then luthenta in the nominative and accusative. It's always the same for the neuter. Genitive is luthenton, because on is the ending always. The dative is luthesi, and that's because the ending is sigma iota, but it has merged with the nu tau plus sigma always equals sigma. So we get luthesi, or luthesin, and the accusative plural is luthentas. And the feminine is standard first declension. Luthesa, remember, this one you have to memorize. It's the only one that's going to be different. Lutheses, luthese, lutheson. Luthesi, lutheson, luthesis, and luthesis. The aorist passive square of stops. Because the tense formative of the aorist passive starts with a theta, stems ending with labials and velars aspirate in predictable ways. So, blepo goes to blephthes because that theta is part of the tense formative, that p goes to a phi, blephthes. Also, it's almost impossible to pronounce blephthes, which is the main reason why this has happened. One way you want to think about it is that H from the theta has merged with a stop, the P to become a phi. Dioko becomes diochthes. The dentals change to sigma. Patho becomes pasthes. Aorist passive contract participles. First, aorist contract participles are formed if the stem of the verb ends in a vowel. Because the tense formative begins with a theta, final stem vowels expand in one of two ways. It's going to be the same as with a sigma. Alpha and epsilon will expand to an eta. Agapao will expand to agapethes. Poieo, that epsilon, will expand to poiethes. And an omicron will expand to an omega. Plerao will expand to plerothes. Let's look at a comparison of endings. What we want to do is memorize the participles as adjectives. I mean, that's what they are. But as you remember, third declension, you always remembered it by its nominative form and its genitive form, because the nominative form is the one that you're going to use to look it up in the dictionary. Its genitive form really gives you the true form of the ending. So the present active is on, usa, on, and its middle passive is amanas, amane, amanan. Second aorist is on, usa, on. It's going to be the same as the present. Amanas, amane, amanan. First aorist with its tense formative is sas, sasa, san. And its middle is samanas, samane, samanan. The aorist passive is thes, thesa, then. Love that. Thes, thesa, then. And then everything else is going to be standard third declension. Let's compare masculine nominative singular active participles. So in the present, we have luon, and we're using the present stem and no tense formative. And then we're going to have the standard third declension endings. Luantas, luanti, luanta, luantes, luanton, luusin, luantas. Second aorist, we're going to use balon because it's such a clear one. In the present, it would have been balon with two lambdas, but the second aorist loses a lambda. So we know the second aorist stem is bal with one lambda. And the aorist tense has no tense formative, just like the present. In fact, it is identical to the present except for that aorist stem. And then, of course, third declension all the way down. Same declension endings as in the present. The first declension, first aorist, has an aorist stem, and it has a tense formative of sigma alpha. So we would remember Lusas. You see that sigma alpha. And then all the way down, standard third declension. And then the aorist passive, Luthase, and it's an aorist stem and a theta epsilon tense formative. And then all the way down, third declension. So, except for the nominative singular, all of the endings are identical. So, there's not much to learn, except look at it, say, does it have a tense formative? If it does it have an aorist stem? Good. First aorist. No tense formative. Does it have a present stem? Yes. Present participle. It has an aorist stem, second aorist. And then the aorist passive, does it have a tense formative of theta epsilon? Yes. Aorist passive.